It's been about 6 years since 9/11, and the man at the heart of it all, Osama bin Laden, is still at large, assuming he's alive. In the meantime, how many Americans really understand what al-Qaeda wants? There are, of course, the familiar list of issues, but the truth may be more disturbing. Now a new book, The al-Qaeda Reader, translates certain texts from the Quran, Osama bin Laden, and al-Qaeda leaders, some of it never translated into English before. The editor is Raymond Ibrahim, whose parents came to America from Egypt. He speaks fluent Arabic, studied Middle East history at Cal State Fresno, and did graduate work at Georgetown University's Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. He now works at the Library of Congress. So, Raymond, why do you think we need a book like this? Because most of us kind of know that Osama bin Laden hates America.
Right. Well, I think we needed a book like this to put things in a better perspective, because we just get half of his writings and half of his communiques, which are all propaganda.
And sort of custom made for the West,
for
right?
our consumption, basically, which is to create a guilt trip and make us seem as totally unjust and that he and the Muslim world are the victims, whereas the theology section, which we've never seen and which are not ever sent to us, and that's why we haven't seen them before, kind of contradict all that by saying that no matter what, the West is damned if it does, damned if it doesn't, until it actually accepts Islamic rule.
The reasons for Osama bin Laden's animosity toward the West are well known: U.S. support of Israel, the occupation of Iraq, and the decadence of Western society. But Ibrahim says these political issues are not addressed in the theological writings, that the theological texts of al-Qaeda reveal a deeper divide.
When you read the theological treatises, it contradicts, because it doesn't address any of this. All it says is what Muslims are commanded to do per se vis-a-vis infidels. I need to read one quote, just one. This is Osama bin Laden talking. Thus, our talks with the infidel West and our conflict with them ultimately revolve around one issue, one that demands our total support with power and determination, with one voice, and it is, does Islam or does it not force people by the power of the sword to submit to its authority corporeally, if not spiritually? Yes, there are only three choices in Islam: either willing submission, conversion to Islam, or payment of the jizya, which is tribute, through physical, though not spiritual, submission to the authority of Islam, or the sword, for it is not right to let him, an infidel, live. The matter is summed up for every person alive: either submit, live under the suzerainty of Islam, or die.
There's also a passage in there about mingling or becoming friends with Christians and Jews, right?
Right. He has this whole essay, this is Raymond Ibrahim, called Loyalty and Enmity, and it's about a 60-page document, and it's totally grounded in Quranic verses and the traditions of Muhammad. And basically, in short, what it says is that Muslims must always be loyal to other Muslims. Love and friendship for them, non-Muslims, contradicts faith. Allah Most High said, "O you who believe," this is a verse from the Quran, "do not take the Jews and the Christians for your friends and protectors. They are but friends and protectors to each other. Whoever among you takes them for a friend, then surely he is one of them." In other words, he's an infidel.
There's also the issue of compatibility between Islam and democracy.
Right.
And according to some of these writings, they are not compatible at all.
Right. There's an entire treatise written by Raymond Ibrahim, which is in here, Sharia and Democracy, and after basically showing how antithetical democracy or any kind of government, not just democracy, socialism, communism, how antithetical they are to Islamic law, because one of the main aspects of Islam is that there's the law to follow, which is derived from the Quran and the sayings and deeds of Muhammad. And so Raymond Ibrahim even concludes it by saying, "Thus whoever claims to be a democratic Muslim, or a Muslim who calls for democracy, is like one who says about himself, 'I am a Jewish Muslim,' or 'I am a Christian Muslim,' the one worse than the other. He is an apostate infidel."
So basically, it's impossible to be, according to him, Muslim and participate or support democratic or other governments.
Right. And the reason for that is because from the inception of Islam in the 7th century, one of the key features of it was following the law of Allah, Sharia law. Islamic law. It has many names: Sharia law, Islamic law, divine law. And so basically, if you read the Quran, it's full of prohibitions and commandments. And so the way to really prove that you're a Muslim is you want to follow this. So how his argument ultimately is, how can you say you're a Muslim and then get together with a bunch of other Muslims and vote something that has already been fixed from on high and vote against it?
So this would be very disturbing to Americans, obviously. What percentage of Muslims actually believe in this or are willing to fight for these kinds of ideas?
Well, that's a very complicated question, and I obviously personally don't know. I don't think anyone does know, but it really all depends on how much a person wants to identify himself or herself with being Muslim and how literally they want to take the Islamic sources, the texts. So just as it is with Christians and Jews and Buddhists and all sorts of other people of other faiths, you have all kinds of people that identify with a religion, but they don't necessarily, not only do they not follow it, they don't even necessarily even know so much of their own religion. And I think that's the case with a lot of Muslims. The question, though, is in Christianity, I think this is what we don't see so much fanaticism of Christians in that sense, is because Christianity, if you really read the text, is very metaphysical. It's not so much grounded in the law. Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto God the spiritual what is God's.
So we separate religion
So
and
church
state.
and state has always, based on Jesus' own words, was really separated. Now, of course, with the Catholic Church and history, that's different, but going to actually the text, it has always been separated. It's passive Christianity, turn the other cheek, pray for those who persecute you. But in Islam, you have all these laws. And so if it's so grounded in what you do in the now. In fact, every single action a human being can commit in this life is classified under 5 categories in Islam. Permissible, forbidden, disliked, which means you can do, but we don't want you to do it.
Round down.
Yeah, permissible, which doesn't matter, do it or don't. Recommended, we'd like you to do it, but you don't really have to. And obligatory, you have to do it. Every single action in this life. Under Sharia
Secular
law.
or
Oh, well, yeah,
or
it's all,
religious.
yeah.
It's all
It's
bound
all
into
one. There is no separation between secular. Life is religion.
We don't want necessarily this kind of thing to shade our perception of Muslims
Right.
here, or make
Right.
cause all sorts of discrimination and
Right.
hate crimes and whatnot
Right.
against Muslims here. And yet that's kind of what it's doing.
Right. Well, that's why I would caution people when they read this to always do what I do, which is I basically separate Islam from Muslims, just like I separate Christianity from Christians. One is an objective ideology, the religion. It can be studied, quantified, analyzed. I can sit here and say Islam commands this, Islam does not command this. Muslims, on the other hand, are just human beings like everyone else. They're subjective. So you can be a Muslim and A, you don't even know about the violent verses. B, you know about it and you just don't care. You're not going to apply it to your life. Mm-hmm. That's what a moderate Muslim would be.
Yeah.
Or, just indifference to it, like a lot of people of whatever faith. So
or you can be sympathetic but not be willing to
or
actually.
you can be sympathetic with the cause, but you're not going to actually commit to it physically. Exactly. But you understand it. You see? Mm-hmm. So that's the thing, ultimately you have to keep that dividing line. There's religion, which we can talk about Christianity. We can sit here and really say Christianity says this, it doesn't say that. Does that mean Christians do that? Does that mean they follow that? Maybe a small percentage. It's the same thing, I guess, with Islam.
Well, Raymond Ibrahim, thank you very much for bringing some very interesting writings in your book to us.
Thanks for having me, Val.